On from its recent placing to raise £3 million, AIM-listed Angus Energy has just bought a controlling interest in the Saltfleetby gas field in Lincolnshire. George Lucan is Chief Executive of Angus and joins us now. George, welcome. We spoke to you recently, in fact mid-May, and you were saying then that you were awaiting on a deal. I couldn't talk about it, but you were waiting on a deal that could be transformational for the company. And here we are now sitting on this news at Saltfleetby, or Saltfleetby, I understand it is actually.
Indeed, if you're a Lincolnshire person, that's quite important. So it's Great Grimsby, but right. It's Saltfleetby.
Okay, so you've got this deal.
We've got the deal. We got that in the bag very, very late last night. That was a very exciting moment for the company, and I think it's a transformational moment because it's taking us out of our pure wheeled basin play in Kent, Surrey, and Surrey and Sussex, and it's taking us out there into the Lincolnshire fens. It's taking us out of pure oil and into gas, and it's taking us out of pure exploration or predominantly exploration into some development and some real production and cash flow for shareholders.
Yeah. Explain the structure of this, because I'm interested in it as much as it doesn't actually seem to have cost you any money. This looks like it's too good to be true. We'll get into that point in just a minute, but how is it structured?
Well, I think that's something I'd really like to go through. We're actually being paid £2.5 million to do one of two things. One is reconnect this field to the national gas grid and restart production, or if at some stage in the next month or two we have some view that actually that's not going to be possible, then that £2.5 million is given to us to abandon the field and shut down the 7 of the 8 wells there. One is already shut in. So it's actually not costing us a penny to do this, and our estimates of reconnection costs or abandonment costs, one or the other, they either fall below this 2.5 million. So we're hoping we get this job done and we get gas flowing and cash coming into the company without any further expenditure other than our effort and our expertise.
What is the process involved then in connecting it up, and what is it that could happen which would indicate that it wouldn't be possible?
Right. Okay. Well, we've already. Well, let's start with the process. In the old days, when the field was fully operational, and it was one of the largest, in fact, producing gas field in the onshore in the UK, the eight wells produced straight via pipeline to the Saltfleetby gas terminal, huge terminal, which took a lot of offtake from the North Sea as well. Now that's owned by Conoco, and they made a decision to shut that refinery a couple of years ago, and they're in the business of demolishing it now. So we don't have the option to process the gas where it was processed before. But nowadays, and the quantities we're dealing with, we can use some very sophisticated, wonderful equipment which will get the right pressure on that gas, which will get the right amount of water, so-called dew point control equipment, and will make sure that it is in the perfect condition for direct entry into the national grid. And that process we are very, very fortunate about, because of course next door to Saltfleetby, the big terminal, is one of the a dozen or so entry points to the national grid. As you might imagine, entering a high pressure gas system is not an easy thing to do. So you might be close to a bit of the national gas grid, but you really need to be close to one of the entry points to do this in a cost-effective manner. And with great good luck, National Grid Transmission haven't closed off that entry point and hadn't removed any of the equipment despite the refinery having closed. So we will be able, by just extending the pipeline we already had to Saltfleetby another kilometre, we'll be able to connect directly to that entry point and start pumping it to homes and businesses around the UK.
Will you have to make that cost of that extra mileage in terms of the pipe before you establish whether or not all this is possible, or are you going to be able to establish it's possible before spending the money on the pipe?
Well, we've already established with National Grid Transmission the fact that it is possible to connect.
Okay, fine.
So, and we've established an approximate estimate of the tariff rate that would apply to our volumes. Right. What remains for us to do is be absolutely confident that when we open the taps on these wells, which incidentally should have picked up pressure in the last 2 years since they were closed in, will still be enough to deliver commercial volumes.
Right.
We are very, very confident of this, and we've been over all the analysis that we've got a good, we think, at least 8 years of production from the field, and with a little bit of work, maybe longer.
It all sounds very simple once you get over the technical side of it, which obviously you've got the expertise in doing that. Why hasn't Wingas, the previous owners you've taken that share from, why have they not done this already? Why was it not commercially viable for them?
Well, yes, that's a very interesting question. Can't, of course, speak for what another company thought, but Wingas was a subsidiary of Gazprom Germania, which is part of the bigger Gazprom group. Their focus in Europe is distribution of gas, not generally extraction, production, and storage. And I think they looked, when acquiring Saltfleetby, they were looking at this as potentially a big storage hub in the UK. As it transpires, they're less involved in distribution in the UK than they are on the continent. And I don't think they saw any great strategic requirement from the government for a reserve, a storage unit. So when they then looked at, well, Conoco's closed its refinery, shall we try and do an Angus job? Gazprom's not really set up to do that kind of micro production. It's used to, as we know, huge trillion cubic feet fields, and it's employing people, the top-rated suppliers for all of its kit, as you might expect. And the costs would overwhelm a relatively small level of production, which is, for us, of course, a feast. But for them, it's a beggar's bowl of soup.
Yeah.
So that's essentially why they haven't done it, I think.
One final question has to be about when is this going to start production, assuming it all goes to plan and money's going to start to flow on into the company accounts. What should investors know about the future prospects for returns?
What we've said is between May and August 2020 is when we hope to reconnect. There is, as usual, regulatory approvals which have to be met, and we can't hurry the regulator in any sense. And we have to get national grid, gas grid, the transmission system absolutely comfortable, that at every stage of the process our equipment is up to their standards, and the safety standards all the way through the chain are very high. It's impossible for us to hurry that process. We have to take it very carefully. We have to be respectful of their internal procedures. But it is our hope that we may be able to achieve production and cash flow between May and August 2020. And that's what we're saying in our presentation.
Well, just finally, explain a bit more about the economics.
Yes, well, the field was last producing about 5 million cubic feet a day, which works out at about, I think, 1 billion cubic feet a year, a little bit over. We expect to take 10 billion cubic feet over the life of the deal. It's very different. These terms are very unfamiliar to most people. But broadly speaking, gross terms, that will be about 50 million pounds. In fact, 12 odd billion cubic feet would be about 50 odd million pounds of value, which Angus's share before costs is about 27. Right. We reckon costs over that 10-year period about 10, so we're down at about 17. That's our low case estimate. Our high case estimate is almost double that. And if you take that in the context of our market capitalization today, which is just north of 20, and 22 mark, this deal on its own, without shareholders having spent a penny or barely a penny of their own money, this deal is the value of the company today. And that's the message I've been trying to get. And as you began this interview with, quite rightly, shareholders are saying this is too good to be true. Well, it isn't actually. This is capitalism working really well. Yeah. We're a big company lets off an asset to a small company because there's an enormous cost advantage in the small company taking it over. And that's the message I wanted to get over today.
Good. OK, well, we'll leave it there. But George, in the meantime, thanks indeed for joining us. George Lucan, the Chief Executive of Angus Energy. I did speak to the company 4 weeks ago about the other assets that the business has. You can catch up with that with a link below.